Your boy Forever Cabron coming in to let you know to check out What's Hood with me, the Compa FC, where you can roll one up with a real one. We chop it up about everything, dog. Politics, hood shit, music, movies, acción, you name it, la causa, el movimiento. We want to tackle things about looking at your culture differently and all that good shit. So if you want to look into that, if you want to find some self-love and self-worth, dog, check out a compa. Roll one up with a homie, dog. Every Tuesday and Thursday, right here on Binge on This. Check a homie out, dog. Stay up late.
Welcome to Sam of All Trades, a Binge on This show. Binge on This, where you can find other shows like Roll 420, the tabletop RPG show featuring games like Dungeons and Dragons and Call of Cthulhu. Reading Ronin, where tales and fables are read for your listening pleasure. What's Hood with Forever Cabron, where we take an introspective dive into the Latin culture. Happy News with Perry Kurtz, our favorite wild grandpa who is back from his planetary exile. And This, That, and the Other, a podcast show with Bryan and yours truly. Today we are joined by a great guest, Grant Shook, who is a track supervisor. Welcome, Grant. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Ready to get out of the heat of the summer, but good.
Yeah. What time is it over there?
We're 2 hours ahead of you, so right around 5:30, I believe, right now.
Okay, nice. And where is that, Virginia?
No, Mississippi. I got moved. The railroad, what they don't tell you is you can get moved wherever their tracks are laid at. So,
Okay, so let's get into that. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you ended up becoming a track supervisor.
The background I got from the military, where my last 3 years I spent as a bridge officer, as in the engineering company. That helped me out to land this job, and started off just inspecting tracks and making sure they were safe for trains to pass. And when you come in as a trainee, you know, like you do in a lot of places, it's everything's sugar coated, it's glamorous, it's wonderful. But I soon learned 3 months in that that's not the case. It's very dangerous, more danger than I thought it was. You're relying on 9 times out of 10, you're relying on a piece of paper to protect you from.
What do you mean by a piece of paper? Like by what it said on it, or? Yeah,
exactly. All right. So to inspect track, you got to get out on the track. So I drive one of the trucks that has the high rail wheels on it.
Okay.
So you can patrol up and down the railroad tracks in your pickup truck.
Okay.
And, you got to get a track authority from a dispatcher, which basically grants you a block of time to occupy this certain section of track. Well, ultimately, all that is a piece of paper that says you have permission to be here. Well, 3 months in, while I was still a trainee, the dispatcher gave me my track authority, but copied it into the computer on a different track.
Oh, no.
About 10 minutes into my patrol, got met head on with a fully loaded ethanol train.
Whoa.
And totaled out a brand new truck. Thankfully, we were able to get out in time. But
how fast was it coming? Or obviously you could hear it?
We met in a curve, and they were doing 41.
Oh.
So thankfully they were coming out of a slow order, which is basically a bulletin saying you can't go faster than this because of such and such, talking it, yada, yada, yada. So they were coming out and starting to pick back up to track speed, which would have been 70.
That's a lot of weight to try to stop.
Yeah. From the time we saw the headlight to the time impact was made, it was 9 seconds, and they were doing 41 miles an hour at time of impact. So they were slowing down, shot all of it out. But it's an eye opener. It wasn't what I was expecting when they hired me on.
Did they tell you, like, hey, keep your head on a swivel, you never know?
Yeah, they tell you, but they also reassure you that it doesn't happen, and everybody's extra careful, and you double copy and all that. But anyways, it's more dangerous than what I expected.
Yeah, I would.
And we can go into that more later. But initially, I got brought on to inspect track and maintain track standards. nowadays I'm doing everything from planning jobs of installing new switches to tying surfacing gangs, which are gangs that are coming in and installing thousands and thousands of ties and on hundreds of track miles and making sure it's smooth as butter when they get done.
How you have a first hand look on the infrastructure of tracks. I mean, we've heard stories of bridges and stuff like that that are in disarray. I mean, how is it as bad as they say it is, or is it just we're constantly having to upkeep?
You're constantly having to inspect and upkeep it. I mean, and just like anywhere right now, you're getting hit with budget cuts with everything going on. And so there's repairs that need to be made, but you don't have the financial ability or the actual material available to fix it 100% the way it needs to be. So you're making the best repair possible. And, you know, there's certain tracks, there's 5 different class of tracks, and they're rated for different speeds. So they have different, I mean, you get into physics and all kinds of stuff when you're doing track maintenance. You got to have the right super elevation so the cars don't tip over, and it's
a lot of math involved.
Oh yeah, more than.
So are you involved in a lot of that math skills? I mean, was that something you had to learn, or was that something you found from the Army that you brought from the Army? Was that skill set?
The math stuff, thankfully, you know, you have to understand what it's telling you more so than compute it yourself nowadays.
Okay.
Now I have a level board. I can walk out and say, all right, this is 2.5 inches off, a half inch off. We need to come in here and pull it and get the elevation right. Elevation in inches will transfer to degrees, and that's all simple stuff. But then you got to remember you already factoring in an offset of 3 inches. So I'm very thankful for the computers and devices that are out now, because if not, I'd be walking down with a calculator half the time.
Or like the Amish with a rope or something.
Oh yeah, we use ropes too.
Oh, I thought I said that as a joke. No, for reals.
No, well, it's not exactly a rope. We call it a string line. Mm-hmm. Basically, it's 2 clamps you would use to hold like 2 pieces of plywood together.
Yeah.
And a fishing reel attached to one. And that's, you stretch it out to 62 feet, and you take measurements along there at 15.5-foot stations to make sure your degree of curvature and everything
makes sense
where it needs to be for the elevation.
That makes a lot of sense. Old technology that we still use today. What do people think you do compared to what you actually do when you tell them what you do?
So you drive the trains is what I hear the most. They think everybody that works for the railroad is going up and down the tracks on an engine.
With a hat.
Yeah, with the hat and hanging out the window and blowing the horn. No, I would love to have that job. I assume it's fun. Mm-hmm. I've ridden up there with them more times than I can count. But unfortunately, my job is on the ground with 4-foot wrenches and sledgehammers and lining bars and all kinds of heavy crap that'll hurt and kill you. And just to make sure those guys up there in that big old 17-ton engine stay up there.
Damn. So is that something you would like to pursue in the future?
No. I'd like to do it once. Mm-hmm. I don't see myself as an engineer, because I'm in the engineering department, but the guys that drive the trains are called engineers.
Yeah.
Which is, it confuses people when you say, no, I'm in engineering. They're like, well, engineers drive the trains. No, yes and no. But no, I'm looking more in pursuing a higher level of leadership and advancing my education to where I can actually get involved in the design and construction a little more ahead of actually implementing it into the track structure. So trying to come up with better ways to maintain stability while improve longevity of the track.
What is one thing that you see that needs improving like that, that you're like, man, if they would just do this, this would save so much time or improvement or?
What I have had pass through my head, I don't know how many times, is we have a problem with track surface everywhere you go. Whether it's because mud or improper drainage, or just some lines are packed on top of what's called coal ash, where when they were hauling coal, that became the sub ballast of the railroad, and they just put rocks on top, sink down. But what I've seen success with, and it hold up year over year, is when they cut all of that out and go in and build it up with smaller rock and then actually pave it like you would a roadway.
Okay.
And then bring in your big rock ballast, pack it in, put your track back on top of that and surface that, because then it's not going to deviate nowhere near
right
as much. That would cut down a lot of these mishaps you read or hear about, and there's a lot more that happen that the general public just never hears about.
Oh, I'm sure we don't hear about.
We don't
hear about all the accidents, car accidents. I wouldn't think the same thing about trains.
Yeah, I mean, usually the only time you hear about a train derailment is if, it's Amtrak, because obviously there's people involved, or if it's something hazardous or dangerous that derailed in a populated area, like you had in Graniteville. A few years back, they had somebody didn't line a switch back properly, and you had a train come in and basically explode a chlorine tanker, and people died. People are still injured, and the railroad's still paying out millions and millions of dollars for it.
Damn. What was the problem? What happened to that one?
Human error. It's as simple as that. It's human error. And that's, even with all the technology, that's the downfall of everything out here is human error. Somebody walked away and didn't double check to make sure the switch on the main line was lined for the main line and not the siding.
Damn.
And when that train came barreling down at 70 miles an hour, it was too late for them to stop it, and they were going right into that siding.
So
all because somebody.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say.
All because somebody did double.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a little bit of a lag.
That's my bad.
No, you good, man.
I'm out here in BFE.
No, you're good, man. No, I was just going to say, obviously your job it could be very dangerous at times, and you're dealing with a lot of weight, and it could cause not only millions in damages, but like you said, injury, death. I mean, all this stuff. Is it, when you realize this, is it nerve wracking, or is it just no big deal when you're working on the roads, on the railroads?
There's times, especially after I had my own real close call with the train running in my limits and destroying my truck, and where I'll find myself there's a pucker factor. Like if I meet a train in a curve, even though I know he's supposed to be on the other track, I'm still making sure my door's unlocked and I'm ready to bail.
Yeah.
And the other side of that is there's a lot of times where you're on the ground 13 feet away from a train that's coming by doing, 50, 60 miles an hour. And you stop work and you try to protect yourself. But if it's dragging something and you're only 13 to 20 feet away from it, needless to say, you're probably going to get caught in some collateral damage there. But it's kind of just an acceptance of the fact of this is what we got to do. And we go out there and do it and try to get it done as safely as we can.
What's the craziest thing you've seen out there?
We get called out a lot for people getting hit by trains. And there was a very large man. Like, I'm talking 400 pounds plus.
Whoa.
That walked out in front of a freight train, and it decapitated, delimbed. I mean, it was just a torso in the middle of the track.
It's like some Halloween thing.
Yeah. And that was the first time I ever got called out to one of those. So that was pretty insane. And then because of everything going on a couple years ago, the Charlotte riots.
Yeah.
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the tracks ran right by where that guy got shot, and people were crowding the tracks, and they called me, and they're like, you need to go out there and try to patrol through and get them to clear off the tracks, and shooting off, and guns are firing, and I'm backing up, and I go back to my hotel room because I was only filling in for another supervisor that was off. And I said, yeah, y'all can go ahead and run the train through. They're only going to do it once. But I'm not getting shot over people standing on the tracks. And later that night, I look out the window, and that's when they had lit that semi on fire on the interstate. Mm. And it's crazy. You're out here in the middle of all of it. I mean, nobody really knows. Railroad workers, I worked the last 18 days straight and haven't been home. This is my first day home.
Oh, shit. I'm doing this show.
I got home and I had to fix an AC and had to put a door handle on it. It's never stops anyways. But, we sacrifice a lot to make sure that these trains keep running, and these trains are moving things like medical supplies and food and equipment that people need all over the country. And through this whole pandemic, none of us have been able to tuck in and hide. We're all still out there, and, our families.
How has the pandemic affected your job? Has it just increased in hours, or are they expecting more from you?
They expect you to be more diligent, take precautions as anybody else would. But now if we're riding with more than ourselves in a vehicle, we're wearing masks. And so you're in a mask all the time, unless you're by yourself, and out here in 90 some degree heat with a heat index of 110, and you're standing around six guys and trying to uphold the health concerns of wearing a mask, but you're hard to breathe as it is.
That's tough. Yeah. 110 degrees. I mean, I moved out from Arizona, and just that, any heat in a mask is horrible.
Yeah.
So I don't think people really understand the infrastructure behind railroads. What would happen to the United States if railroads just stopped?
A lot of essential businesses would collapse. You'd stop getting medical supplies because truckers couldn't keep up. They're logged out with, they're only allowed to drive a certain number of hours in a day, where they can't have somebody come and get on their truck and start driving it. Whereas we can recrew trains. We take our measurements by 1 million gross ton, for a territory. So my territory that I work now moves roughly 57 million gross tons every year. And that's everything from grain for your cereals, for other foods, medical supplies, military equipment.
Everything.
Gasoline, chlorine, everything.
Yeah.
Diesel emission fluid. So and Christmas time rolls around, we got trains that are specifically designated for UPS and FedEx that you do not get in the way of. They're coming straight through hauling people's Christmas packages. Those are some of the hottest priority trains on the system.
So, yeah, we got to get our gifts out there.
Peak season comes, you do not hold them up.
So this is more of a question for me, because I was always into trains growing up. I love the trains from the 30s and everything. Do you see a lot of homeless people hopping trains?
Hopping trains?
Or do you catch them?
We'll see them and call them in. Like each railroad actually has their own police department.
Oh, okay.
So I work for Norfolk Southern Railroad. There is a Norfolk Southern Police Department, and usually at each territory, there's at least one or two officers that respond to things and help with. We see a lot of homeless camps by the railroad tracks. There's actually here in Meridian, Kansas City Southern will tie into Norfolk Southern, and it'll run all the way out to Dallas on the Meridian Speedway. And there's a channel on YouTube where you'll see videos of people jumping off overpasses onto the top of rail cars and riding them out to Dallas. Mm-hmm. There was a guy that took from Dallas all the way to Meridian and hopped on another one and went back. So people are doing it. People are doing it for fun. I highly suggest you just don't do it.
Sounds dangerous.
It is. It is very dangerous. Even if the train's not moving, there's no guarantee that it's not going to move.
Yeah.
There's a kid when I was in Greensboro, North Carolina is a pretty big college town. It's got several different schools there. Guilford, UNCG, A&T is a great place. Well, the yard right there is like 2 blocks away from Spring Garden, which has a bunch of bars on it. Well, a drunk college kid a few years back decided he was going to cut through the rail yard and decided to try to climb under one of the rail cars, and it moved.
Oh, shit.
And now there's some kid walking around with no arms from his elbows down.
Well, he learned a valuable lesson that day. Don't break in and don't cross from underneath trains.
Yeah. It's not a safe place.
How frustrating is it for you to see videos of people trying to beat trains with their cars? Trying to beat them?
I guess it doesn't really frustrate me anymore. I just kind of think, how stupid do you got to be? Because I've been called out countless times to get time for the county coroner to come get bodies out of a car that tried to beat a train.
Damn.
The train's not going to lose.
No. That's going to go right through you.
I've seen them twist 18-wheelers up like bow ties. And a car isn't going to stand a chance. And I hate to see it, but it's either they were drunk or they were dumb.
Yeah.
It's the price you pay.
Wise words. Well, I like to end off all my Sam of All Trades shows with one last question. It's usually a fun one. What actor would you choose, dead or alive, to play you in a movie?
What actor would I choose? What's that fat guy's name?
From which movie?
He was on SNL for a little while. Fat, bald, white guy. Was it Sam?
Levy? No, not Levy.
It'll come to me.
When it comes, we'll put it in the description.
Yeah. But like I don't take myself too seriously. I like to try to have fun. And I think picking an actor, because I'm not a small individual, but I'm not, I ain't gonna sit here and be like, oh yeah, the Rock is the only one that could portray this. Like, nah, give me a chubby funny dude.
Shoot high, man. Shoot high.
I am shooting high, man. Chubby funny dudes are the best.
No, they're great, man. Well, dude, thank you again,
they love
Grant.
Tacos.
What's that? Oh, they love tacos?
I said they love tacos and a good time.
I know. Who doesn't like tacos, though? Well, thank you again, Grant, for coming on to the show. It was a pleasure. Again, you do a very incredible service to this country. So I would just like to thank you on that, especially since you are technically a frontline worker. Without you, things wouldn't get done. So I just want to thank you again, man. And I'd love to have you back on the show, especially on This, That, and the Other with Bryan, so we can at least bullshit and talk about whatever we want and have some laughs.
Hey, man, anytime. If I'm sitting next to the track waiting on trains, there's times where I got nothing but hours to sit there and watch trains go by.
There we go, man.
Some days my days are long, some days are short, but I'll always make time for Bryan and yourself. I had a good time talking to you. It was nice to finally meet you.
Thank you,
I've been
man.
watching.
It's nice to meet you too. It's good to put a face to the name.
Yeah. I've been watching you guys since you fired up, and I've enjoyed it, watching y'all grow, and really putting on some quality shows.
Thanks, man. So, I really appreciate you saying that. Again, thank you, and yeah, man, I appreciate your time today.
Hey, man, you too. Thank you. Y'all be safe out there.
All right, man. Take care.